And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into episode number 27 of season 3, y'all know the deal. I got to talk to you about a few quick things. First off, if you are new to the channel, please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you happen to like our podcast and know of other Detroit Pistons fans, make sure to hit the arrow button right below this video. That is the share button. You can share us on Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, all of the above. So make sure, if you know some Pistons fans that want to be in the know with everything going on with the Detroit Pistons, make sure to share your favorite Pistons podcast, Revved Up 906. Also, if we do happen to be your favorite Pistons podcast, you can wear our merch and rep us. In the link below, there is a link to Grind Clothing Co.'s website where you can check out a plethora of different design options. Also, make sure to follow Grind Clothing Co. on Instagram. That link is also down there. So just shout out Grind Clothing Co. They're a class act. Also, if you happen to be tuning into this week's episode but aren't so much into long-form content, you can follow us on Instagram. That link is also below in the description of this video. Our Instagram, we try to post 3 clips a week, debate topics, hot takes, and news breaking on the Detroit Pistons. So make sure to follow us on Instagram. Without further ado, let's get into episode number 27 of season 3. And as you can tell by the thumbnail, today's main topic is Jaden Ivey's contract extension, which is in a stalemate as we currently speak. But before we get into that, that's what we can look forward to. We're also going to be talking about NBA 2K ratings and everything that kind of goes into that. Me and Ryan are big 2K fans. We played a lot, so it'll be fun talking about the 2K ratings and where our Pistons players sit at. But before we get into these 2 topics, we have to talk about what just broke this morning. As of this morning, Javonte Green is being signed to a 1-year deal with the Detroit Pistons. Per Shams, Green is finalizing a 1-year deal with the Pistons, giving the team a gritty, experienced presence on the wing. Known for his relentless energy, perimeter defense, and ability to finish above the rim, Green fits the mold of a high-motor player who can impact games without needing the ball. Also, as Pistons fans, we all know that JB Bickerstaff is a defensive-minded coach. What's going to be interesting to see, and maybe we'll eventually find out, if this was a JB Bickerstaff, going to Trajan Langdon and being like, hey, go out and get this guy. We need this vet. Also, I think it'll be interesting to see what his role transpires into, because we know that we have a lot of small forward, power forward guys like Ron Holland, Asar Thompson, Tobias Harris, who are kind of these swing guys that can swing between small forward and power forward. So it'll be interesting to see where Green ends up in the rotation. Ryan, if you had to make a prediction, how many minutes are you giving him a game for the Pistons?
Oof, that one's a tough one, honestly. You break down what his normal average has been of minutes. He's hovering around 16 minutes a game career-wise, but
right.
Last year with Cleveland, he was around 9 minutes a game. And honestly, if he's around 9 minutes a game with Atkinson as the coach and just what Cleveland has done last year, and a lot of that team is, majority of that team is what JB had, I would assume that maybe it's probably going to be around the 9 to 10 minute mark too for the Pistons, even though they never crossed paths in Cleveland together. But I do think it's probably around that 9 to 10 minute mark if he were to have a mark. And who knows? It might not even be 9 to 10. It could even be 15. I don't know. But he's one of those guys where it's not one of those splashy signings where it's like, okay, this guy is definitely in the rotation and definitely going to give us 15 minutes every night. No, it's not one of those. It's one of those where it's like, we don't know what it's going to look like night in, night out. And we know that JB Bickerstaff likes to adjust the lineup and just go on the fly. And so there could be a situation where, like we had in the playoffs, where Asar Thompson was in all the time, where you had Ron Holland, who at certain moments of the game would get subbed in or out,
right,
just based off of what JB was trying to do defensively at that time, I think Javonte Green is going to be that too. Obviously, I'm comparing apples to oranges right now, but in the overall broad scheme of things, Javonte Green is one of those guys where in crunch time situations, or not even crunch time, but just in general, when you need a defensive presence, you're going to go and stick him out there on the floor.
Well, and like you said, with position and having so many guys at the 3 and 4, it's like, okay, where's he going to fit in? But my other thought is this is a guy that is either going to make it or break it with the Pistons. He's going to have to either step up, show that he's going to be a great bet for the Pistons, or show that he just can't cut it in the NBA anymore. And then one of the main reasons I bring that up is because he played 50 games with the New Orleans Pelicans, but then reached a contract buyout mid-season after getting bought out. Green joined the Cleveland Cavaliers for the remainder of the 24-25 season. So obviously there's some things there, maybe not just aging out, but maybe an energy thing. I'm not exactly sure on the details. I'm looking forward to getting to know and watch a guy like Javonte Green. I also think there are openings for a guy like Green to come into the Detroit Pistons and show that, hey, I've been in these playoff situations before. I've been in the grind of the 82 game season in the NBA and showed up and made some big plays at times when the Pistons might need him and when other teams he's been on needed him. So I think it's going to be an interesting situation for him. I think there's big opportunity for him to stand out on this young Pistons team. It's just time will tell, and if he makes the most of his opportunities. Let's now talk about the NBA 2K ratings for our current Pistons players. I know as Pistons fans, the Pistons aren't always the first choice to use in 2K in years previous, but I always put my career guy on the Pistons. It was always fun trying to turn the franchise around. Well, now the team's actually good in 2K and they're fun to use. And Ryan, I'm pretty excited about some of these 2K ratings. But first off, Cade Cunningham was given a 92 in this year's 2K. Hasn't yet to come out. Ryan, what do you think with the 92 for Cade? I think that's pretty cool to have a guy over 90s. First guy since Chauncey Billups.
And rightfully so. He's the one out of the whole team where I'm like, yep, give him a 90 overall. If we go based off of this past season, and honestly, me and you brought it up a lot that he probably should have been in the MVP conversation, but wasn't.
Yeah.
And then I'm sorry, but the most improved player award for him, that's just disrespectful. He's not most improved. He did the same thing he did last year, except he extended it. So 90 overall plus. Oh yeah, Cade should be getting that. There's no reason he shouldn't be in the 90s right now.
Yeah, and I could see him getting to a 95 by the end of the season. I think that would be sweet. And then to be the first guy to have an over 90 overall since Chauncey Billups, come on, that's pretty dang cool. Jalen Duren was given an 84, Asar Thompson 83, right around that same level. I'm kind of surprised Asar has an 83. But I don't hate it. It's good for 2K's sake.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I was expecting more of like the 80, 81 range than 83. I mean, he's in that ballpark, but still, no, I'm happy with an 83. I'll take that. It's a little surprising that he's ahead of Jaden Ivey, but I understand why at the same time. It's just a weird dynamic there.
Right. It's hard to know with Jaden Ivey coming off an injury. And we're going to be talking about that in a second. Where is he going to be at? So I could see how 2K was put in a tough position. I could see Jalen Duren hovering around a 90 by the end of the season. I think he's going to have a huge third season for the Detroit Pistons. Tobias Harris, 81. He's kind of been hovering around 81 the last couple of years. He's just kind of a consistent guy. Karis LeVert, 80. Beef Stew, 77. And Ron Holland, 76. I think 76 is a little high for Ron Holland, but I personally love that he's kind of respected in 2K sense.
Yeah, I'll take a 76 out of him. Now, Isaiah Stewart getting 77, that's a raw deal. Like, he should be a little bit higher. I would say maybe at least an 80. I think a lot of people would go like, okay, that might be considered high for him. But I think a lot of people would also put him in the ballpark of 80 because he is one of the best shot blockers in the NBA. Yes, that's shot blocking. That's not scoring or just the main focal point of defense. But the fact that he can do that at such a high level for being 6'7", 6'8", 6'9",
Right.
like that is fantastic. But outside of his stats, I think he actually should be in the 80 ballpark. But I don't know. But it's weird because when you think of Karis LeVert being at 80, and then you think of the idea or concept of Isaiah Stewart being at 80, does that seem right? Because to me, it's like, I don't know if that seems right, because I feel like LeVert should still be a little bit higher than Stu if they're both at 80. It's weird.
Well, something that I find interesting with Asar Thompson at 83 is that Amen Thompson in 2K26 is at an 87. Do you think there's that big of a discrepancy between Asar and Amen for 2K ratings?
Definitely not. There's not that drastic of a
I
difference.
don't think so either.
Like obviously they're twins, so they kind of have the same abilities, if we want it to be
Same
technical.
athleticism for sure.
But I mean, Amen, what he did with Houston, I think really what it is 2K just gives love to random guys on good teams. I think that's what it is. Now, I'm not saying
Right.
Amen is random, but like you think of the addition of Kevin Durant to that team, 2K sitting there licking their chops, going like, okay, how can we maximize every single player's rating on this team so that this
Right.
team is one of the best in 2K and fun to play with? That's what they were doing. It has to be because there's no way that Amen is an 87 and Asar is only an 83. Now I understand from an offensive standpoint, Amen is far ahead of Asar, but from a defensive standpoint, Asar is ahead of Amen. So that's
Mm,
why I'm a little. There shouldn't be that big of a jump between the two. Now, if like I don't know if Asar was an 83 and Eamon was an 85, I'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like I'm cool with that. But an 87 to 83, that's too big of a gap.
yeah, I agree. I don't think there's that big of a difference in their talent levels. Yes, Amen is a little bit better at putting the basketball on the floor and rim chasing. And maybe this mid range game is a little bit better, but as far as the differences in their skill sets, I don't think there's a huge difference. I think that 2K did Asar Thompson a little dirty. Let's get into Jaden Ivey's contract extensions being in a stalemate. As of this morning, there were lots of talks about how Jaden Ivey and discussions of a contract extension with the Detroit Pistons has not gone as expected. From Sports Illustrated, a financial standoff is brewing in Detroit as Jaden Ivey becomes eligible for a contract extension. The negotiations appear to be at a stalemate. According to John Hillinger, it's a hard time seeing how the Pistons and Ivey couldn't come to a resolution on a long-term number, end quote. The report highlights a key conflict. The Pistons, who are under no long-term cap pressure and can afford to wait a year, end quote, are playing the long game. Ivey, meanwhile, has a strong incentive to push up the value of his next contract rather than settle for what would most likely be a mid-type money, for especially for his position. So basically, what they're saying is we think that Jaden Ivey is in for a big year. If he settled and signed now, it could just be okay money. But say he has a all-star level season, he could be missing out on millions if he signed, say, this month. Ryan, as far as conversations, becoming stalemate, what is your worry level? Because obviously, as Pistons fans, it's always hard to feel out worry, especially when you're looking at everything from afar. Pistons fans in particular seem to freak out pretty fast. Where's your head at as far as worry?
So my concern, I mean, if you think about all that transpired this past year, was starting to break out, have a fantastic first 30 games, like fantastic first 30,
Yeah,
and
agree.
then gets injured and obviously misses the rest of the season. But then you have towards the end there that he was cleared and getting ramped up, and then
Mm-hmm.
we never even saw him in the last 5 games of the
Nothing.
regular season, which it was getting talked about that he was going to play,
Yeah,
and then we never even saw him in the playoffs.
I
Um,
know.
and it was a little interesting there because
Yeah,
why would the Pistons come out and say, "Oh yeah, he can play," and then not play him? Um,
exactly.
and so there's something there that's not necessarily being talked about.
I
Um,
think so.
and maybe it was just they were trying to look out for him and protect him because they
Mhm.
know how valuable he could be down the road. But it was a little interesting to see that he at least did not see the last five regular season games, which those are just tossaways anyways. Um, but what's worrisome outside of how the season transpired is I love Jaden Ivey, right? I love him. But the fact that he is kind of asking for a little bit more than what he is worth right now, and it's just it bugs me a little bit, right? Because you think of this past season, yes, he was averaging 17 points a game and was hovering around a steal and a block per game, four assists, four rebounds, shooting 74% at the line, um, 40% from three, 47% from the field, averaging around 30 minutes a game. And he was just playing at a very high level in those 30 games. And to me, I'm not saying he can't replicate that, but usually when you have that hot of a start and then you go down with injury, you, the next season's different because you're trying to get re-intuned. You're trying to get back to where you were at. And then not only that, but like think of the mindset approach. Like you go in from last year going like, "Oh man, I'm having a great season." That happens and then you come back. How do you come back from that? How do you get back to that same mindset of like, "Yeah, I'm that guy," when you're probably going to be slightly less of that guy than you were last year. Um, but if we want to bring this down even further, to me, at least a little bit of concern is he's asking. It seems like he's asking for at least like maybe Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Suggs money right now, which I'm not saying he doesn't deserve that. But realistically, I would put him at the Tyler Hero, RJ Barrett range, where he's making around 107, 120,000, 100, not thousand, 107 to 120 million dollars a year. Like that seems reasonable. But the money he's asking for, I feel like, well, we don't know the exact number, but it just seems like he's asking for Donovan Mitchell money, based off the fact that there is a stalemate. Because obviously they're not agreeing on one thing, and I'm guessing that's the money. It's not necessarily the length. I think they're in agreement on the length. I think it's the money. And I think Langdon and Bickerstaff may be concerned that um, that Ivy, with this last injury, they pay him this money that he's expecting to get, and then he's not the same player at all, and he actually is worse. Then you're stuck in a contract situation where
Yeah,
you have a contract of a player that, if you go for the trade market alone, no team is going to want. Who's a good example of this? It's like Paul George has an example, right? Paul George, on paper, great player, but then you throw in the injuries, and then it has this contract that nobody wants because it's absurd.
right.
And I'm afraid to this is my concern really, is that, and honestly, I think it's the same core lines with Langdon and Bickerstaff, is that if you sign him to what he's wanting right now, probably at the Donovan Mitchell level, where Donovan Mitchell is making $150 million a year right now. If you sign him to that contract, what happens if he worsens or gets lesser of the player he once was? I think that's my concern, is that you sign him to this money. It takes up a crap ton of our cap space that we don't have to use down the road. And we have a
Right.
contract with a player that nobody wants. That's what I'm concerned about. Now, I'm not saying Jaden Ivey is going to get worse all of a sudden, but it could happen. It's not impossible, but I think that's my concern. And I would have to say that it's probably the Langdon and Bickerstaff concern too, is that if they sign him to this contract, what happens down the road? Because if it works out for us and it works out for us, great. But it's hard to predict that.
Well, and the type of injury Jaden Ivey is coming off of, some players just never return to what they originally were. I mean, look at a guy like Derrick Rose, for example. Like, he deals with the same injury and then just never really has the same career he had his early years in Chicago. Also, we're talking about a player that's trying to get Donovan Mitchell money that hasn't played in almost a year. So I think there's a lot of question marks rather than answers that JB Bickerstaff and Trajan Langdon are looking at when negotiating with Jaden Ivey. I think he's putting a lot of stock in those first 30 games, like you talked about, how he was just playing absolutely incredible, looking like, hey, Jaden Ivey might have an all-star appearance this season. Who can argue that? And then he gets injured, and it's like, okay, well, what's going on here? And there's a lot of question marks. Also, when talking about a contract negotiation with Jaden Ivey, I would imagine they're looking at a 4-year deal. Is that where your head is at, Ryan, as far as 4 years? Or because I know sometimes they give guys 2 years, but I think with Jaden they give him a four.
I think it's a four. I think Jaden Ivey wants to be a Piston long term. I don't see the length being the issue. It's definitely the money. I think if it's not 4 years, it's probably 3 years with a player option or a team option.
Right.
But I'm thinking and even with that being said, it's still 4 years. I think it's a 4-year deal.
My other worry is that when Jaden Ivey gets in his head, it strictly translate to his play on the court. And we saw that happen with Monty Williams when Monty was just kind of, I don't know if hater of Jaden Ivey's a little strong, but just kind of like they just didn't mix well. And we all saw Jaden Ivey's minutes drop drastically when Monty Williams was at the head of the Pistons. And so my only worry is with these conversations stalemating with Ivy and the Pistons that it might cause ruffles in his confidence, right? Might cause ruffles in his head of, hey, I got this contract looming over my head, and I don't know how to deal with it. So that's my only worry too. Is when Ivy's confident, he is one of the best players in the NBA. I truly believe that. When Ivy is in his head and struggling off the court, that's when it strictly translates to his play off on the court. So I think it'll be interesting to see where that kind of ends up. Because he seems like he can be a mental case sometimes. Getting into some of the details of Jaden Ivey's season, per Kevin McCormick of Sports Illustrated, he had some thoughts on Jaden Ivey re-signing with the Detroit Pistons. Quote, at the start of the year, he was one of the biggest standouts for the Pistons. After being buried on the depth chart by Monty Williams last year, JB Bickerstaff gave him the opportunity to shine. This proved to be the right move. As the former lottery pick, put up some of the best numbers of his career. Like Ryan said, in his first 30 appearances this season, Ivy averaged 17.6 points per game, 4 assists, while shooting over 40% from the arc. However, things took a turn for the worse on New Year's Day. In a matchup against the Orlando Magic, Cole Anthony fell on Ivy's leg while driving for a loose ball. The Pistons guard would suffer a broken leg on this play that left him on the sideline for the rest of the 2025 season. Sustaining this injury was a tough blow for Ivy, as he was finally showing the Pistons why they should make him a key piece of the team's core moving forward. His shortened season also makes this tougher when it comes to a possible contract extension. Because of this, of his limited availability this season, the people at Bleacher Report projected that Ivy won't sign a new deal this summer and will opt to prove himself more in the 2026 season. So it just kind of continues to say how Jaden can either, I don't want to say settle because that kind of has a negative connotation, but kind of just be like, hey, let's get this deal done and move on and look toward hopefully another playoff run with the Pistons this year. Or say, hey, I'm betting on myself. I think I'm worth more than you're offering me. And let's go and let me prove myself and let's talk next off season. Ryan, simply put, do you think the Pistons are at fault with lowballing Jaden Ivey, or do you think that he's just like a little in over his head? Like, do you think they lowballed him like bad?
I wouldn't say it's bad. I understand their concern. And if their concern is what we're saying, then which I think it is, then it makes sense why they would lowball him a little bit. because and honestly, you want to bring this as an example. I'll bring this up as an example. So Devin Booker was getting talked about very highly as being an off-season move for the Pistons. That we were going to make a move for him, and most likely in that deal would have included Jaden Ivey.
Right.
But and it would have been a sign and trade because the Phoenix Suns wouldn't have just wanted to let him walk. But with that being said, the money that he ended up signing in that deal with Phoenix, which is an absurd number. I love Devin Booker, but that honestly was much higher than what anybody would have priced him out personally.
Yeah, he got paid.
And so I bring that up because you think of this stalemate with Ivey's contract negotiations and probably what he's asking for. My thing is, and I love Ivey, we all do, but like if Ivey's asking for this money, if I'm JB Bickerstaff and I'm Trajan Langdon, it's almost as if like if we wanted to sign Devin Booker to that absurd contract, we would have signed Devin Booker to that absurd contract.
Right.
But
Fair.
and that's why I bring that up because they're in the situation of they know what Devin Booker's value is. They know what Jaden Ivey's value is. Are they on the same level? Absolutely not, because it's obvious. But if they know that Devin Booker shouldn't have been paid what he got paid, then they also know that what Jaden Ivey is probably asking for is a bit higher than what he should be valued at. And so, no, I don't think it is a low ball or a bad. It's really bad. Yes, it is slightly on that low ball side, but it's not that bad, honestly, because we don't know exactly what is going on. But if our prediction is correct, then no, it's not a low ball because whenever you're dealing with money, it becomes tough. Would you rather have cap space and be able to maneuver a roster around that and get the most out of your roster you could possibly get? I would say yes to that. And I think Ivey would be in agreement too. But I think Ivey's also, like you said, going off of the fact that he had a fantastic first 30 games. And so because of that, he feels like, okay, I should be worth far more. But it's like, dude,
Mm-hmm.
you missed, what was it, 52 games? You
Mm-hmm.
missed 52 games. Majority of the players in the league played at least 52 games. And you only played 30 of the games that they probably sat out in. And you're asking for the money that they probably would have gotten too. It bugs
Yeah,
me slightly.
he's played one game this season or this year in 2025.
Yeah.
Months
Yeah,
in.
he hasn't played much. And so if no, I don't think it was a low ball, but I think they do know the value of Jaden Ivey. And I don't think Jaden Ivey knows the value of Jaden Ivey right now. And so that might cause an issue. And that might leave a bad taste in Ivey's mouth. And I hope that's not the case because I know all Pistons fans and I know like us both really would love Ivey to stay on the Pistons. But I also have felt as if Ivey's one of those guys where he hits a certain level and that certain level isn't the level that we all hope he will hit and that he gets moved for the player of the level that we wanted to get. And so because of that, that also would probably play into the part of how much money do we give him? Because if we pay him like he is Devin Booker, but only gets to the level below him, so like a Desmond Bane, then we're kind of stuck here because Desmond Bane's contract with the Magic, I will say, is a little absurd. I just want to throw that out there because those two guys got paid far more than what I think they're actually valued at. But then again, that's why I brought this up because Ivey, I think, is valuing him based off of his first 30 games and not what his whole season looked like. And so I think it becomes tough because if you can't value yourself correctly and you ask for this obscene price, then you have the management side of things going like, okay, he definitely doesn't know his value. And so maybe it becomes an issue and you have to move on from him down the road. But I don't want that to be the case. And nobody wants that really. But it's just tough because it's not a low ball, but it's a low ball. It's just, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, whenever a team and a player get to a stalemate, it stinks because then everything's just paused for a whole 6 months, and it's like, no, let's just get her done. But also, you want to see the performance on the court and see if the money adds up with the play. It's always a tough situation. So whenever a player is heading into a contract extension and have one more season to go before contracts get start talking about and deals are being tossed around, there's always a point, and it's usually in the off season, and then a little bit more talk always happens right around the trade deadline. But there have been some trade proposals that have been being tossed around with Jaden Ivey. And the one that's most popular I'm seeing right now is between the Dallas Mavericks and the Detroit Pistons for PJ Washington to be coming to the Detroit Pistons and Jaden Ivey getting dealt to the Mavericks. Now, it's just something that always naturally happens. It's not something to fret about, I would say, as Detroit Pistons fans, because I know that we're all big Jaden Ivey people. You know, he's a fan favorite for the Detroit Pistons. But it's something that's going to be happening more and more. While Ivy can be seen as more of a valuable trade asset than Washington, he's also coming off the significant injury, as we all know. Even though he has improved his shooting, he is still better as an on-ball player than off-ball, making him a tricky fit next to Cade Cunningham. Though we did see at the beginning of last season in his first 30 games, him and Cade kind of find a way to work well with passing the ball between each other and each finding their own shots. Ryan, as far as a trade like this, two things. Do you see a trade happening with Jaden Ivey after knowing there's a stalemate? And then also, would you like a PJ Washington trade for Jaden to get rid of Jaden Ivey?
I don't know if I see a trade. I think they will at least consider writing it out for a little bit, and see what ends up happening out of it. As far as for Jaden Ivey and PJ Washington,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a fair trade at all. I think I'd rather have the possibility of, honestly, I would write it out with Jaden Ivey and see what he ends up becoming, and I'd feel more comfortable with that than moving him for PJ Washington and getting a
Mm-hmm.
guy that I know what he's going to be like. Because, I mean, PJ Washington is great. He is a great four in the NBA and a great three in the NBA, too. He's a great wing in general. Um, but he's also a role player. That's all he is. He's a role player. Does he end up starting for the Mavericks at times? Yes, he does, because he's actually that good. But he's a role player. He's not a starter. He's a role player. And so I think when you're trading a starter for a role player, it gets into a messy situation because yes, you open up that cap space, but then you have a guy on your roster that, let's say he has longer than a 1 year deal left. Nobody is going to try and trade for PJ Washington, really. You're not going to get the same assets for PJ Washington as you could potentially get with Jaden Ivey. So because of that, I think it's a little bit of a like a bad deal per se, because I think just if you looked at it side by side, PJ Washington, Jaden Ivey, everybody's sitting there going like, "Oh, that's not fair," because we all know Jaden Ivey, if he got to the level he should be at, he'd be far, far above than what PJ Washington could ever get at. But at the same time, we don't, again, like we said earlier, we don't know what it's going to happen this year as far as the same player or not, or different. And so because of that, it's like, yes, you could move Ivy for a decent valued piece in PJ Washington that maybe that is the max you could get out of him. Because
Mm-hmm.
if he is lesser of a player, who knows what you could get? Maybe it's not as good as PJ Washington, which I don't think that's the case. But I don't. I'd rather ride it out and take a chance on Ivy than move him because of a stalemate in a contract negotiation. Um, because I'd rather see what he has left in the tank. And maybe Ivy's sitting there going like, yeah, I don't want to get moved at all. I want to be a Piston. And we've heard that conversation before because remember
Mm-hmm.
Tobias Harris? He said the same thing. When he was originally in Detroit, he did not want to get traded. He wanted to be there for the rest of his career. And then what does Stan Van Gundy do? He trades him. And I don't like Stan Van Gundy. We both don't like Stan Van Gundy,
Yeah.
but I'm just throwing that out there. You made that
Mm-hmm.
mistake once before, and let's say Tobias would have stayed. Obviously, our team now would be completely different, but Tobias stays during that time and we don't move on from Blake Griffin. Yes, Blake Griffin was amazing as a Piston, yeah, but Um, I would have been very curious to see how that would have played out. And I think this is the same situation because you have Jaden Ivey here, who is borderline around the same level that Tobias Harris was at originally with the Pistons before we moved him away for Blake Griffin. I'd be concerned to do that same kind of deal, and then Ivy ends up being a stud. I don't want that to be the case because Ivy's still young. Yes, he had the injury, but he still has the age where it's like there's still a lot of time left for him. And maybe he doesn't get to the same level that he was at in the first 30 games. But JB Bickerstaff and Trajan Langdon are creative enough to get the most out of guys. And that's what happened with Tim Hardaway Jr. this past year. Tim Hardaway Jr., nobody knew what was going to come out of him. Was he just going to come off the bench and play a couple minutes here and there? Or was he going to get a decent amount of time and be something? Well, he ended up being something and getting great minutes. Why? Because JB Bickerstaff was very creative about where he wanted him in certain lineups. And yes, maybe Ivy doesn't get to the level he was at in the first 30 games, but JB Bickerstaff is a good enough coach to build a rotation centered around Ivy and have Ivy maximize to his abilities, but maybe it's not to the same level that he was in the first 30 games in that rotation, but he could be good in another rotation. So I think this trade is a bad trade. I wouldn't do it because I think the value that Ivy has, even with the injury, far surpasses what PJ Washington could bring to the Pistons. And PJ Washington's already aged. He is. He's like fine wine at this point. He's getting older year by year. Obviously, that's how aging works. But PJ Washington, I don't know if he could ever. I don't think he could get to the level that Ivy's at, and I don't think he could get to the level that even Isaiah Stewart is at defensively. If we're talking offensively, yes, he can surpass a lot of the guys on our team, but defensively, he's not one of those defensive-minded first players. He's offensive-minded first, which is fine. But Ivy has been tailored to do both in his first couple seasons. And so that's why I think Ivy still, even with that consideration, has far more value.
Well, and you look at a play style of a PJ Washington, he's basically an Asar Thompson with a jumper, I would say. Maybe you got Asar in a little bit more of the height category. But do we really want another tweener at the four when we have so many on our roster already? Also, when you trade away a young guy like a Jaden Ivey, I think there has to be draft assets attached to it. I don't see in the future Jaden being dealt away with like just a one-on-one player trade. I think it would more happen in a blockbuster trade with like a big name, like what we were maybe thinking with a Devin Booker mid last season. I don't think it'd be with Devin Booker this upcoming season. I think if it was going to happen, it was going to happen, 3-4 months ago, right at the trade deadline. I think it was the best time for it to happen. So I think, if the Pistons are bringing in a big name this upcoming offseason at the trade deadline, I also don't really see it happening. But if it did happen, Jaden Ivey's attached. I think, and Asar Thompson is attached. So, but we all just know that this comes with the territory of when someone's coming up for a contract, extension. It's like, okay, yeah, they're all being thrown into trade talk. And unfortunately, that's what happens. And unfortunately, also for us as Pistons fans, we all love Jaden Ivey. We all think he's a great guy and a great player. But it's just always what happens. And it's also tough because, like, I feel like these last couple draft picks that the Pistons have had the last couple of years are like our baby in a way. Like, no, don't deal away the guys we love. These are the guys that made the Pistons we love today, and made the team exciting again, after so many years of pain. And Jaden, Cade, Isaiah, Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, or some of these guys that are like, no, like these guys can't be talked in trades. We love these guys. It sucks, but it's just that's what comes with the territory of when contracts start coming up. That will do it for episode number 27 of season 3. If you happen to like today's episode, make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.